Bill Maher may have set the record for the greatest number of falsehoods or strawman arguments in the shortest conversation on Palestine and Israel. Here are 20 false or misleading claims he made last week in just a few minutes of talking about this.
I was watching this war go on in Israel.
Okay, first of all, this was not a war, because only one side has an actual military with actual fighter jets and tanks. But even if you wanted to call it a war, it would not be a war in Israel, because the overwhelming majority of the bombs were dropped on Gaza, and the overwhelming majority of the dead were Palestinians in Gaza. And Gaza is occupied Palestinian territory that is not in Israel.
And it was frustrating to me because there was no one on liberal media to defend Israel, really.
Alright, this one is so absurd, it really is hard to know how to respond. Yes, coverage was a little bit better this time. Instead of being uniformly pro-Israel, there was some recognition of Palestinian humanity, and there was some space for Palestinians to speak for themselves. But it was hardly the utopian coverage that Bill seems to be having nightmares about.
I'd also like to say off the bat that I don't think kids understand, and when I say kids, I mean the younger generations, that you can't learn history from Instagram.
I mean, you can't learn all of the history on Instagram, but you can learn a hell of a lot more following informative accounts like the IMEU on Instagram than listening to uninformed people like Bill talk about this.
Well, Gaza fired 4,000 rockets into Israel. What would you say Israel should have done instead of what they did?
Are you leaving anything out here, Bill? I mean, was Israel minding its own business when rockets were suddenly fired out of nowhere? Or did it just skip your mind that Israel is suffocating millions of people in Gaza under siege and is carrying out ethnic cleansing in the West Bank?
I mean, what if Canada fired 4,000 rockets into America?
Again, is America occupying Canada and preventing Canadians from getting access to clean drinking water? Because if they were, then this would be an apt analogy, and we can talk about correcting America's behavior and then achieving peace through justice.
Or Mexico, which is an even better analogy because we actually did steal the land from Mexico. I would submit that Israel did not steal anybody's land.
This is the most ridiculous claim of them all. Israel was literally built on land theft and ethnic cleansing. To establish Israel, they destroyed more than 500 Palestinian towns and villages and drove out more than 750,000 Palestinians out of their homes.
This is another thing I've heard the last couple of weeks, words like occupiers and colonizers and apartheid, which I don't think people understand the history there.
At this point, Bill is like a falsehood machine. Of course Israel is an occupier. It says it right there over and over in a mountain of UN resolutions and in the opinion of the International Court of Justice and in the reports of every major human rights organization in the world. And of course Israel is a colonizer. They are literally building colonies on stolen Palestinian land to the condemnation of the entire world. And of course Israel is an apartheid state. You can just read the details of that in this recent Human Rights Watch report detailing Israeli apartheid. Or you can just watch this clip.
מפה, מנון, רק יהודים. למה? קפטן, החליט.
The Jews have been in that area of the world since about 1200 BC, way before the first Muslim or Arab walked the earth.
Okay, now we're getting a little stupid, so let's clarify the issue. There are lots of civilizations that lived in Palestine, including the Canaanites and the Jews and the Persians and the Romans and the Byzantines and the Umayyads and the Crusaders and the Ottomans. There's no denying that there is a legitimate Jewish connection to the land of Palestine, in the same way that there is no denying that there is a Christian connection and a Muslim connection to the land. But in the same way that the Christian connection doesn't mean that the Vatican can come along and drive Palestinians out of their homes and claim the land, and in the same way that a Muslim connection to the land, which is a legitimate one also, doesn't mean that Saudi Arabia can come along and drive Palestinians out of their homes and claim the land. The legitimate Jewish connection doesn't mean that European Jewish settlers can come along and throw Palestinians out of their homes and ethnically cleanse them to create a Jewish state of Israel. That's what we're talking about here. This isn't about which religion came first. This is about whether the indigenous people of Palestine can be ethnically cleansed out of their homeland in order to create a Jewish state that denies the rights of non-Jewish inhabitants in the land.
There was never a country called Palestine that was a distinct Arab country.
It's really bizarre that you think this is relevant. Yes, Palestinians did not have a recognized independent state before the creation of Israel, and neither did the natives who lived in America before Columbus arrived. But that did not change the fact that they lived here and this was their land. The idea that it becomes okay to ethnically cleanse people out of their land that they've lived on for thousands of years simply because they did not have an independent state is just ridiculous.
The UN in 1947 said, okay, we're going to partition it. We have the map. I want to show it. People forget what the map looks like. This is what was on the table at the beginning. The green is the part that the Arab population would have gotten.
Once again, you're leaving out critical information, like the fact that Palestinians owned more than 90% of this land. And so of course they would reject a deal in which they would just have to give up half of their country. And of course the other side would be eager to accept a deal in which they would gain a ton of land that they've never owned. As for the modern two-state solution, which has been around for nearly 30 years, in which Israel gets to keep nearly 80% of the land and leaving Palestinians with barely over 20%, it is Israel that rejected that deal and insisted on colonizing all of Palestine.
Hamas's charter says they just want to wipe out Israel. Their negotiating position is you all die.
I am certainly no fan or defender of Hamas, but the you all die claim is just made up. Their new 2017 charter is available for everyone to read. Also, if you're concerned about mass deaths, you may want to notice that it's actually the Israeli military that's responsible for the most killing of civilians here. And it's not even close. Back in 2014, they killed more than 550 Palestinian children in Gaza in the span of 6 weeks. Ever heard of the phrase, actions speak louder than words?
The two-state solution has been on the table a number of times. There could be an Arab capital in East Jerusalem now if Yasser Arafat had accepted that in 2003. He did not.
That's also not true. The capital offered to Arafat was Abu Dis, which is near Jerusalem, but not in Jerusalem.
I mean, they have rejected this and went to war time and time again.
You just don't know what you're talking about. Palestinians repeatedly said no to tiny and isolated and separated pieces of land that would not make for a viable Palestinian state. In fact, what Palestinians were being offered at the end of the so-called peace process was so ridiculous that even Israel's own foreign minister at the time said that had he been Palestinian, he would not have accepted it.
Camp David was not the missed opportunity for the Palestinians, and if I were a Palestinian, I would have rejected Camp David as well. This is something I put in the book.
And, as far as Gaza goes, it's amazing to me that the progressives think that they're being progressive by taking that side of it, the Bella Hadids of the world, these influencers. I just want to say, in February of this year, a Hamas court ruled that an unmarried woman cannot travel in Gaza without the permission of a male guardian.
This is yet another ridiculous straw man. No one is defending the regressive social and political attitudes of a Hamas-affiliated court. The Bella Hadids and the influencers are speaking out against Israel's killing of Palestinian civilians and children. And seriously, Bill, shame on you for covering for those killings by dragging in the extraneous and completely irrelevant issue of an indefensible court decision.
From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, is I think what she chanted with people. That is a PLO slogan that means Israel from the river to the sea, is that there will be no more Israel.
When the civil rights movement in America demanded freedom and equal rights, that was not a call to destroy America. It was a call to transform the country from an apartheid state into a country in which everybody's rights were respected equally. Likewise, the call for a free Palestine is not a call to destroy anything or anyone except the discriminatory apartheid regime that rules the land. It's a call for a more inclusive future in which every Israeli and every Palestinian can live together in freedom and equality.
That included the Arab Party.
Correct.
And once you're part of the government, if they need your 3 votes in the Knesset to get to 61,
which
you have real power.
no apartheid state ever did. What's it? An apartheid we think of as South Africa. The Israelis, they have made mistakes, but it's an apartheid state because they keep getting attacked.
Wait, Bill is trying to have it both ways here. Which is it? Is Israel not an apartheid state, or is it an apartheid state because they keep getting attacked? You know, every apologist for a racist system has defended it by insisting that the oppressed had to be denied their rights because they are too wild or dangerous to enjoy equal rights. And this is fundamentally no different. It tells you everything you need to know about Bill's worldview and really that of the Israeli government, which is that they don't see Palestinians as equal human beings who are deserving of freedom and equality. And this is precisely why Israeli apartheid persists. And it's also precisely why this crisis will not end until Palestinian humanity is recognized.